just want to make two quick announcements before General come over. As you know, tomorrow we have an all-day excursion, and we're trying to make arrangement for the all-day excursion. What had been put together is that there will be a heritage tour in the morning, which all of us will participate in. But in the afternoon, we have a choice of one out of two. One is to go to a place that represents Botswana village life, and the other one is a safari. Where is Pretty? Am I right? So what we are going to do is that we will put notices, a note out, a piece of paper outside. We'll set up a table, and you can indicate which of them you want. There will also be somebody there to be able to guide you on if you want to ask any question. So in the morning, we're all doing the same thing, but in the afternoon, you have choice of one out of two. One is village. So the easy way to remember it is one is village, one is going to the animals. I hope it makes sense that way. So you can then decide which one you want. The second thing is our colleagues need to be sure of departure dates and time. So if you have not indicated to our colleagues, Lebo is not around. Again, we're going to try and set up a table to please just check and be sure that they have your time of departure, date and time of departure, so that necessary arrangement can be made for you. We also want to make the point that this hall will not be available in the afternoon. So we're going to move to use two big halls outside of here. We need to prepare this place for the gala night. So this is the last session we'll be having here, and any other session will be taking place. There is an annex room. That's where we would have them. And of course, my colleagues will be coming around to distribute a few things, particularly the learning journal. We did say that one of the things we did was to prepare a learning journal which enables you to kind of reflect on the experience, take notes of what you are picking up, so that you'll be able to take the information back to improve work in the office. So colleagues will be coming around and giving you a piece of paper. They are really yours to use, but essentially the idea is for you to use the information there to reflect on what the expo has provided. Is that okay? Did I? That's fine, All right, okay. Okay, all right, okay. I think there is a suggestion that we kind of move closer. Yeah? So the people at the back, we would suggest you move forward, because I think the production says that the room looks scattered. So we can kind of concentrate around. So the ladies and the gentlemen at that far end, my far left, if you can move forward, please, and move this way. Would that be okay? I think, yeah, just around here, so that the room doesn't look too scattered. Okay. Please don't forget, you need to indicate your preference for the tour tomorrow. We need information on your flight and departure time.
Good morning, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Session 7 of the IOE on the theme Silencing the Guns in Africa and AU Agenda 2063. I just want to apologize that we're starting a bit late, not at the appointed time. And you know how that makes me feel as a general, you know. There's a saying that generals are never late, but are delayed. But in this case, I'm not the one who was delayed. I was here by 9:15 already. It's a distinct honor and privilege for me to be afforded an opportunity to actually moderate this session on a very important theme for our continent of Africa, which is silencing the guns and also the AU Agenda 2063. It is a theme that is very close to my heart because I deeply share the aspirations of African leaders and our peoples for a peaceful and successful continent of Africa. I think we deserve that. I need to confirm that Agenda 2063 is Africa's development blueprint for attaining inclusive and sustainable economic growth and development. The Continental Agenda was adopted by the heads of state and government during the Jubilee, the Golden Jubilee celebrations of the African Organization of African Unity, or AU, in May 2013. It seeks to deliver on a set of 7 development aspirations, each with its own set of goals, purpose that moving Africa closer to achieving the Africa that we want. The blueprint contains key activities to be carried out in 5 10-year implementation plans, which will ensure that Agenda 2063 delivers both qualitative and quantitative transformational outcomes for Africa's people over a 50-year time frame. To ensure systematic monitoring and reporting on the progress and performance of domesticating and implementing the Agenda 2063 at national, regional, and continental levels in the area of oversight mechanism. All countries reported that they have established institutions and measures for control and accountability. As such, Ombuds institutions and oversight mechanism cannot be excluded in this regard for purposes of ensuring that there are requisite checks and balances on the executive and legislative powers. However, it's important to note that citizens' perceptions of effectiveness of oversight institutions to hold their leaders accountable vary between our countries. Most notable, the following Agenda 2063 aspiration resonate with the role of Ombuds institution and implication for good governance, security sector reform. That is aspiration 1, a prosperous Africa on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Aspiration 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. And aspiration 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. With only 3 of the 7 aspirations I've already alluded to, the question of Ombuds institution as watchdogs in ensuring the implementation of these aspirations cannot be discounted. I believe this session, therefore, will attempt to draw insights on the following questions. How is Agenda 2063 and its implication for Ombuds institutions' soft powers? How do Ombuds institutions aid in synchronizing Agenda 2063 and silencing the guns whilst still remaining apolitical and unbiased? And finally, how can Ombuds institution collaborate to ensure that such institutions maintain advocacy for the sake of secure and peaceful institutions in Africa? Of course, our continent can never have prosperity in an environment of wars, hence the need to silence guns. This objective was supposed to have been attained by our continent by 2020. However, unfortunately, we know we're in 2024, and this has not been attained yet. So the goalposts have been shifted to 2030. We've got eminent speakers who are going to help us navigate through the theme of this session. On your program, if you can go to the program, I want to apologize for the fact that two of our speakers seem not to be here. And both of those speakers were supposed to be speaking on silencing the guns in Africa and AU Agenda 2063. The first speaker was supposed to be Advocate Vasu Gowden, who works closely with my office whenever we actually organize a symposium. He works for the organization called African Center for Constructive Resolution of Disputes. The next speaker was supposed to be Ms. Pearl N. Ramukuka. No, let me just confirm this. I think she's here. Ms. Pearl N. Ramukuka, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Defense and Security in Botswana. However, we're fortunate that we have two additional speakers who are going to be assisting us in this session. The first one is Ms. N. Tinomugwisha. I always struggle with the name there. Sorry. She's the Deputy Inspector General of the Government of Uganda, and she'll be speaking on the roles, performance, and challenges of office. And the other speaker is Professor Butsanalo Masi Makoko. She's a Chief Executive Officer, Botswana Qualifications Authority, BOA. And we're really grateful that you could actually avail yourself at short notice to be able to share with us your experiences. And of course, the two that are listed on the program itself, they are here. That is Honorable Isaac Shande, the Ombudsman of Mozambique, will be taking us through the topic of enhancing the role of Ombudsman in peace building in Africa, reflections on issues, problems, and prospects. And of course, Ms. Aline S. Brock, former ombudsman of Bermuda. And you'll recall she's one of the pioneers that we saw flighted here, the first session. So she'll be taking us through conflict resolution and peace building. Do women do this differently, and lessons learned? I'm looking forward to a very vibrant exchange of ideas. And I want to urge you that even if you don't have questions, but at least you can make some comments to make the session interesting. To the speakers, then, I want to indicate that we'll be allocating you 20 minutes each. And I wanted not to be always reminding you of the time, but if I don't do that, we may actually overshoot the allocated time. So when we are left with 5 minutes, you'll see me coming up the stage. Then you must know that your time is about to end. And then I will whisper to you to say, you've got 5 minutes to go. With that said, then, I would like to then invite our first speaker, Honorable Isaac Chande. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Bom dia a todos, sejam bem-vindos.
Welcome to this working session. As I said earlier on, as a South African military ombudsman, this session is going to be a very lively and exciting session. I have not prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to make a presentation within the time that has been allocated to me. I'm going to be very brief because the theme that has been proposed to me was just to be a thought-provoking theme, a topic, enhancing the role of the Ombudsman in peace building in Africa, reflections on issues, problems, and perspectives. The topic, we can easily conclude that it's of high public interest, considering the various threats to peace on our continent and the need to build more effective platforms for national reconciliation. Unfortunately, as we all know, our continent continues to be martyred by several wars, of which we can highlight the political instability in some African countries like South Sudan, Somalia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, some parts of Nigeria, because of terrorism actions in that part of Africa. We also have terrorism problems in Niger, Burkina Faso, and in northern Mozambique. In northern Mozambique, we are facing terrorist threats. I'm going to talk about the case of Mozambique. Mozambique, when it comes to peace building and national reconciliation solutions, Mozambique, for example, was affected by a long civil war that lasted for 16 years between Frelimo government and Renamo. In 1992, the General Peace Agreement was signed, which culminated in holding the first general elections in 1994. Despite the holding of the first general elections in 1994, peace was always threatened. For example, during the 2009 general elections, the opposition leader, Mr. Afonso Dhlakama, who passed away, abandoned or left Maputo, the capital city of Mozambique, and took refuge in the forests of Gorongosa, a situation that prevailed until the signing of a new peace agreement in 2013. In 2015-2016, the war rekindled, which after lengthy negotiations led to the signing of a new peace agreement called the Maputo Agreement, which ended in the this was the last peace agreement that was signed between the government of Mozambique and Renamo. This is a peace agreement which was monitored by the United Nations and fortunately was successful, and its implementation has been having some success, because this agreement culminated with a so-called demobilization and social reintegration program of guerrillas from Renamo. They have been reintegrated, and under this program, more than 5,000 guerrillas from Renamo were reintegrated and benefited from pensions so that they could live their lives. Since the signing of the Maputo Agreement until to this date, the arms in our countries, in the central region of our country, have been silenced, because it was above all in the central area of this country where these Renamo attacks were taking place. But as I said, the topic of my communication is how to enhance the role of the Ombudsman in peace building in Africa. Reflections on key issues, problems and perspectives. So, first of all, the question we can ask is whether any ombudsman in Africa plays an important role in peace processes, and if so, how has it been done? This is the first question to be asked. Looking at the main role of the ombudsman in the context of the Portuguese-speaking countries, for example, and even SADC countries, and even the ombudsman from Latin America, I am led to infer that the ombudsman intervention is weak, almost non-existent, in terms of peace building and national reconciliation. And then we can explain what I've just said. On the other hand, it is necessary to recognize that peace processes are eminently political, and in the context of the Portuguese-speaking countries, ombudsmen are prohibited from intervening in partisan political processes, because these processes, more often than not, involve rebel movements. And in these Portuguese-speaking countries, the intervention from ombudsmen, their intervention is limited to observance of the Constitution of the Republic and the laws. And the ombudsman cannot get involved in political natures or partisan issues so that he can maintain his or her impartiality. It turns out that in none of the Portuguese-speaking countries and SADC member countries, and even in Latin American countries, the ombudsmen are expressly granted the power to intervene in peace and national reconciliation processes. Based on the research that I carried on, ombudsman does not have an express power to intervene or participate in mediation of conflicts or to achieve peace. Most of our ombudsmen, they exercise their functions, their traditional functions that we all know, as is the case to intervene in issues of maladministration, mediation of conflicts resulting from acts of maladministration, promote and defend human rights, propose legislative changes, or request the declaration of unconstitutionality of government laws and normative acts, both in in Portuguese-speaking countries and in SADC, there is no ombudsman that has powers to intervene, participate in discussions on peace processes. There are very few exceptions. We had the opportunity to once again confirm these during yesterday's session. They only limit their exercise, they only carry out their traditional functions. There are very few ombudsmen in Africa that, in addition to their traditional functions, have the power to investigate corruption cases, like is the case of the Public Protector of South Africa and the Public Protector of Uganda and other countries, but very few ombudsmen can do that. In general, the roles of ombudsmen are these and do not include their direct participation in the processes of dialogue for peace building and national reconciliation. So, in my opinion, we are supposed to start talking about the need to enhance the role of ombudsmen in peace building in Africa. However, we can question whether the ombudsman should not have an active role in discussions on peace building processes and national reconciliation in Africa. This is a question that we should be asking within these reflections. Maybe it would be convenient that ombudsmen could, given their independence and impartiality, maybe they should also be able to participate. That would be a value addition. I believe that, considering the independent character, as I said earlier on, the independent character of ombudsman, it could be indeed an important player, participant in the peace-building processes on the continent. In fact, as we all know, one of the competences of the ombudsman is to carry out mediations. That is done when it comes to their traditional functions, because in my opinions, they have prerequisites and assumptions so that they can also participate in mediation of political conflicts with a view to establishing peace and national reconciliation that are a huge challenge for the development of our continent. Anyhow, taking in consideration that the constitutions of republic and the laws do not grant this role to the ombudsman, in my opinion, it would be necessary to change the laws and the constitution so that we can cater for this role. Or in some other cases, we could, the ombudsman could assume these functions to mediate political conflicts for peace building, mediating by a resolution of the parliament or by a resolution of government. For example, in some countries, like in Portugal, when there are social crises and it is necessary to give compensations to aggrieved parties, the Portuguese government, by resolution, grants a power to the ombudsman so that they can establish compensations in this regard by a resolution of government. In the specific case of Mozambique and other CPO Portuguese-speaking countries' ombudsman, the ombudsman may have an indirect intervention as a member of the State Council, the political advisory body of the state president. In this political advisory body, the State Council can be called upon to comment on peace processes as long as the President of the Republic so decides. It depends on the state president. It is up to his agenda, the national reconciliation issue. In one of the sessions of the State Council, we discussed this process of the reintegration of the Renamo guerrillas. This has been a successful process. In conclusion, this topic deserves our best attention given its timeliness and relevance on our continent. However, for the Ombudsman to intervene effectively in the processes of peace building in Africa, a legislative reform is essential to confer this power of intervention and conflict mediation upon the Ombudsman so that we can together fight for the urgent pacification of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of my reflections on this topic that has not been is not being discussed at length. And that's the reason why I brought this topic to you. So thank you so very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chande, for your input on this topic. Honorable Chande is a personal friend of mine, and he took me by surprise because he said he was busy preparing to present in English. That's why I didn't want everybody to actually utilize their gadget for translation. But I'm grateful that you could handle your topic within the allocated time. What I propose we do is that we go through all the speakers, then at the end we can then have a question and answer session. So that requires of us to be quite attentive and taking our notes, so that at the end then we can then have that fruitful session. It is now my honor and privilege to invite Honorable Ms. Aline Prock to actually take us through the topic of conflict resolution and peace building. Do women do these things differently? I hope to learn something today in terms of how women sometimes do these things. Thank you, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I actually was so excited yesterday to hear people respond to the good morning, because in Bermuda, one of the very first things someone complained about was that when you walk into a government department and you say good morning, and the person doesn't say good morning back, that immediately they're not going to get good attention. And so we do that in Bermuda, and it was nice to see that you do that in Botswana. I am going to be editing as I go along so that the Lieutenant General does not have to whisper in both of my ears. And I must start, however, by thanking the Ombudsman for Botswana and his stellar team of organized, attentive staff. I really appreciate all of your attentions. And of course, I always must thank Dr. Ayene for this invitation. So in your program, it says the question that was posed is, do women mediate differently? That was not the question I was given. I was given, are women better mediators than men? And my knee-jerk reaction to that question was an emphatic, absolutely not. So let me explain where I'm coming from. My father drilled into our family, and in fact, into anyone who would spend more than 10 minutes in conversation with him, that there's no such thing as inherited ability. So when someone says you're better, we have to find other reasons than DNA and biological reasons. He believed that there's no such thing as intellectual, athletic, musical, etc., inherited ability, and he spent decades looking for that evidence. Instead, he concludes, and I have to agree, that the notion of inherited ability, especially intelligence, is rooted in white supremacy and was concocted to justify slavery, classism, and other forms of oppression that stratifies and permanently assigns certain people into lower ranks in our society. And we can see that still in our countries today. My knee-jerk reaction was also informed by my own lived experience as a trainer of mediators. So one example is the Boston Public School system, in which teacher labor disputes were handled in the first instance by a shop steward at the school site. And if it wasn't resolved, it was immediately sent downtown to the lawyers to a very expensive process. And so I co-led a team that helped to create the grievance mediation service, and that was step 1A. Still on the school site, we trained teams of administrators and teachers to try to resolve the matter when a shop steward could not. And we were able to prevent about 75% of grievances from escalating to the lawyers downtown. We observed absolutely no gender differences in our trainees in their capacity to mediate those issues. So the questions for me have nothing to do with nature over nurture, but rather, is there evidence that there are characteristics that make women excel at mediation? If so, how were those characteristics nurtured? And if so, can anyone, including men, learn and be nurtured with those characteristics? Before continuing, let me just make sure that we are clear about what we mean by mediation. And broadly, you all know, but broadly, that is a process where a third party facilitates other parties with their prior buy-in to prevent, manage, or resolve conflicts and develop mutually acceptable agreements. Successful mediation requires a voluntary process, confidential and balanced communication, and solutions based on objective, reasonable criteria that are capable of being implemented. And best of all, that build relationships. But it's the broader mediation arena that interests us, particularly those mediations and negotiations that are intended to silence the guns. It seems indisputable, I'm editing here, editing out something about the brains of women and the differences and so forth, that no longer is considered good science. But it seems indisputable that any edge that may be discerned in women's effectiveness as mediators is largely due to process and substantive qualities that are nurtured over lifetimes and within all cultures. Women navigate barriers, speak truth to power, and bring integrity, innovation, and persistence to their mediation roles. More countries experienced violent conflict in the year 2016 than at any time in the previous 30 years. And the Ombudsman for Mozambique has just listed some of the current conflicts across the continent that are still ongoing. In this arena of internal country, intra-country, inter-country mediations and conflicts, there are generally two forms of mediations. There's the formal mediation that's often called track one, and then there's the informal resolution, mediation processes, often called track two. And these would include things like conflict prevention, conflict resolution, post-conflict transition, and ongoing peace building. So track one tends to be the formal agreement where you have a signature and you say we all agree to peace. But according to UN Women, female participation in mediation is crucial for achieving lasting peace. Women, unfortunately, are often sidelined in the track one formal type of mediations Between 1990 and 2017, women constituted only 2.4% of mediators in Track 1. They did constitute 8% of negotiators and 5% of witnesses and signatories in the major so-called formal peace processes. So 2.4% is really not enough data to give us an empirical conclusion about whether or not women are different or better. However, we do know that women are overwhelmingly involved in the Track 2 kinds of processes. And it is here that we can uncover some evidence of a gendered edge, despite the fact that women's contributions to local level peace initiatives are usually ignored, except in the iconic case we all know of Liberia. The women of Liberia led the way in showing women all over the world that there is power in organizing and coming together to force the peace, even if they are not formally included in the Track 1 mediations. In 2003, Lema, and I'm going to botch her name, Gaboe, and her legendary collaborators of Mass Action for Peace united Christian and Muslim women together to force the government and rebels to negotiate the end of the bloody civil war in Liberia. And we all remember their unprecedented tactics, including physically barring the parties, the formal mediators, from leaving the room until peace was agreed. They have inspired and mobilized women around the world to boldly assert their right, our right, to engage in the full range of peacemaking activities. When women are involved, they tend to be concerned about systemic outcomes rather than just the transactional cessation of conflict. We know, for example, that women and children are the most vulnerable to long-term psychological and physical ravages, especially of rape when used as a weapon of war. And so women's interest in silencing the guns is also to ensure that there's a process in place afterward to help rebuild society and rebuild their countries and rebuild and redefine the role of women in their countries. Rwanda is a prime example. Today, there's not only parity in the legislature, but general parity in numbers of women and men engaged in ongoing peace building. Some 7 out of 10 field officers in one of the major peace-building projects in Rwanda are women. Rwanda, by the way, in 2020, was ranked among the top 10 countries to have narrowed the gender gap. So we can all learn from Rwanda. Another characteristic associated with women mediators is emotional intelligence, both in the abilities to listen deeply and to discern the concerns of parties who may not feel able to articulate deeply their own sensitive issues. This is particularly the case when one group is less powerful than the other in the formal mediations. Women all over the world live within perpetual systems designed to disempower them. Clearly, our lived experiences nurtures the critical levels of empathy needed to balance power differences between parties and ensure that all concerns are addressed. For example, an empirical study of Northern Ireland women who worked as peace mediators toward the 1998 Good Friday Agreement recounted that the Northern Ireland Women's Coalition played an instrumental part in facilitating early difficult dialogue and bringing a greater focus on health and social issues. They also insisted on the inclusion of language in the final agreement about victims' rights, reconciliation, as well as a commitment to support young victims of violence. This is notable as the vast majority of peace agreements reached since 1990 actually fail to reference the conflict experience or post-conflict contributions of women. The final characteristic that I'll have a little time, hopefully, Lieutenant General, to highlight is innovation in process and creativity in substantive outcomes. Whether as mediation professionals or as community and national leaders, even well-educated elite class women must surmount significant barriers during their lives, including patriarchal systems, traditions, and systemic discrimination. To thrive in a male-dominated world, women must be exceptionally insightful, analytical, nimble, innovative, and intelligent. Our journey often involves navigating extraordinary challenges and advocating for our voices to be heard, sometimes at great personal cost for speaking truth to power. Such women bring integrity, innovation, and persistence to roles as mediators, and therefore we tend to focus on achieving equitable resolutions in disputes. However, despite women's invaluable contributions, we are often under-recognized and unsupported. And face ongoing discrimination, we have to work harder to be equals. In the US, on that side of the world, there's a similar situation attends to black people in the US, for example. We often say you have to be twice as good to achieve half as much. An international peace study of 182 signed peace agreements between 1989 and 2011 found that when women are included in peace processes, there is a 35% increase in the probability that a peace agreement will last 15 years or more. Women's participation in conflict prevention and resolution improves outcomes before, during, and after conflict. More than 50% of peace agreements fail within 5 years, often because they do not involve women who insist upon addressing underlying causes of conflict or seek to prevent its resurgence. Despite our evident capacity to make critical contributions, women remain significantly underrepresented. Accordingly, UN Security Council Resolution 1325, adopted in 2000, recognized the crucial role women should play in peace processes. 7 additional resolutions call for greater and more effective participation of women, for dedicated gender expertise in all peace-making efforts, and especially for the specific needs and concerns of women and girls to be addressed, especially with regard to conflict-related sexual violence. Men, none of you in the room, of course, men and the governments they inhabit claim that there is a dearth of high-level women to be mediators in the formal Track 1 process. But their argument that there are insufficient women simply doesn't ring true. If time permitted, I could list a plethora of incredible women all over the world who are instrumental in peacemaking and peace building. We know some of the leading names: Mary Robinson in the Great Lakes region, Margaret Voigt in the Central African Republic, Hannah Tete, former foreign minister of Ghana, involved in the peace talks in southern Sudan. Before researching for this paper, because of course an ombudsman should never stand on their first knee-jerk reaction to anything, I needed to do some research, and I did not know the names of these many women. I'm going to mention a couple to you, but I will attach to my paper pages of names of women that we should know. We should know their names. We should know their roles, because knowing that helps us to influence decision makers and the folks who make up the teams, especially of the formal Track 1 kinds of mediations. Betty Bigombe of Uganda, some of you may know and may even have worked with her, was the lead mediator in talks between the Ugandan government and the LRA. She says, and I'm quoting, "High-level negotiations are often conducted with much machismo. Men from both sides barge into negotiating rooms, shout at each other, and bang on tables to win the discussion. As a result, many believe that women who usually refrain from banging on tables would not be able to drive their points across." I'm going to just give a couple of quotes from 2 or 3 other women, and then I will be concluding. The regional director of the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa, Hala Al-Karib, noted, women's peace and feminist activists in Sudan's political spaces are surrounded by challenges and impediments, while our narratives and views are not acknowledged. It is critical to invent an inviting and supportive space for those of us who have contributions. The UN Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo trained a core group of women last year for community conflict resolution. Congolese women have almost always been excluded from peace negotiations under the pretext that they have no training or interest in security issues. The Gender, Women, Families, and Children Office of that UN mission noted, we are convinced that women, who are often victims when conflicts erupt, can play a decisive role and can, if not prevent, at least put an end to conflicts with a win-win solution. So I could go on, and we should know these brave names, but I've already taken up too much of your time, and I'm hoping that the Lieutenant General is not on his way up here. One thing I can conclude, and I believe I can confidently report to my father, is that likewise I have found no genetic or significant biological bases for the notion that women are naturally better mediators. What I can say is this: if a person has had the responsibility to care for others, or has ever been vulnerable, or bullied, or discarded, or has been empathetically concerned about issues such as poverty, loss, and oppression, or has developed the muscles of speaking truth to power, or has had to navigate creatively to find solutions in the face of oppression, or has had to assert themselves in order to be heard and recognized, has been a social justice warrior for any issue, and genuinely cares more about justice than ego, and more about impact than power, then that person has the core characteristics of a dynamic and effective mediator and should be so deployed, whether female, minority male, LGBTQ, or otherwise othered. I look forward to the day when men will be equally socialized and nurtured to develop such characteristics of excellent mediators. In the meantime, in my opinion, it seems quite upside down and indeed wasteful of the enormous capacity of half of the world that 98% of the principal mediators in so-called Track 1 formal mediations are men. And I hope that ombudsmen, to the extent that they have any influence or the ears of anyone who will listen, will lead the way in ensuring the inclusion of women in formal and recognition in informal mediations. Thank you.
A round of applause once more to Ms. Aline Crock. She managed that time quite well because I was about to stand. I was going for 20 minutes, but thank you very much. I think we're doing well on time. We'll continue. Sorry, my papers are mixed up now. Okay, thank you. I would like to now invite Ms. N. Tinomo Guisha to come forward to take us through the roles, performance, and challenges of her office. Ma'am, the floor is yours, please.
So where do I keep clicking? Okay. A very good morning to all of you. Good morning. That's encouraging. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, Ombudsmen from your respective countries, the Ombudsman of Botswana and Professor Victor that have put this together, we're very grateful. I am very, very grateful. I know the behind the scenes activities that take place for such a successful conference to happen. And I want to tell you that we recognize that. I recognize that from the bottom of my heart. Until the Ombudsman from Bermuda spoke, I always thought that women were the embodiment of mediation. I am yet to have a rethink that women or men can be better than women. Men, clap for us. I bring you warm greetings from the Republic of Uganda, the land of milk and honey. And I hope that my presentation this morning will give you an insight on what the Ombuds Office, or what in my country is referred to as the Inspectorate of Government Office, does. I was asked to talk about the roles, the challenges, and the experiences of a deputy ombudsman. And that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. I'll start by taking you through our mandate, the Inspectorate of Government mandate. Our mandate is provided under the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and it's tripartite. It's in three. One, elimination of corruption in public offices, enforcement of the Leadership Code of Conduct, and the ombudsman function. I note that in many jurisdictions of the various countries that you present, these duties or roles are by different institutions. It's different in my country. You find that the Inspector General of Government is at the same time the ombudsman, but also at the same time does the anti-corruption role and the leadership role. So the enforcement of the Leadership Code is also under our institution, as well as the ombudsman role. In Uganda, the Inspectorate of Government is the National Ombudsman. The institution is called the Inspectorate of Government, which plays a vital role in ensuring accountability and fairness both in the private and public sector. It is our understanding that an ombudsman is an official that is appointed to investigate complaints against public authorities. Our role, therefore, is to ensure fairness and address poor service delivery. And in doing so, we are independent because we are not under the control or command of any public official or body. We are impartial in our work and offer these services free of charge. In addition, we also seek to resolve complaints that parties may have failed to resolve on their own. We do so through investigations. Now I'm going to take you through the peculiarity of our institution. Like I said, the Office of the Inspector and Deputy Inspectors General of Government is a constitutional body, and it provides that the Inspectorate of Government shall consist of the Inspector General of Government as well as such number of, it's mandatory, such number of inspectors and deputy inspectors. The peculiarity of our institution is that while the Inspector General of Government serves as the administrative head of the institution, the Inspector and Deputy Inspectors General of Government of Uganda, and who are two, are granted exactly the same powers by law, provided that leadership is fully constituted. This ensures that at any one time, any of the top leaders can execute the mandate of the institution without necessarily deferring to others. This means that when a deputy makes a decision, it cannot be overturned by the Inspector General of Government. We have equal powers. In fact, the courts have gone ahead to rule in one of the leading cases, that was a former Foreign Affairs Minister and two others versus the Attorney General in a constitutional reference. And this is what I quote inter alia. The Inspectorate of Government cannot, through the Inspector General of Government, at that time, there was only the Inspector General of Government. The mandate of one of the deputies had expired, so there was only a Deputy Inspector General of Government and one of the deputies. So this was the court's finding, that the Inspectorate of Government cannot, through the Inspector General of Government, when he or she is the only one in office, prosecute or cause prosecution of cases involving corruption, abuse of authority that are a result of the maladministration that the ombudsman does, or public office under the Constitution, when the Inspectorate of Government is not duly constituted in accordance with Article 223 of the Constitution, which require the Inspectorate of Government to consist of the Inspector General of Government and two Deputy Inspectors General of Government. So as duty bearers of this office, we have ensured that the operations of the institution are structured in a way that promotes harmony, respect, and consistency for us to deliver on this mandate. What do I mean? Since we have three functions, constitutional functions, that's the anti-corruption function, the leadership code function, and the ombudsman function, then each one of us is given a function to superintend. Each one of us heads that particular function, and I'm here as the head of the ombuds role. Definition of a deputy. Who is a deputy? I tried to do some research on who a deputy definition of a deputy. A deputy, under normal circumstances, different scholars have defined one to be one in command or second in command or assistant who usually takes charge when their superior is absent. It is also a person authorized or appointed to act as a substitute for another and is usually the most senior person below the head of an institution, who steps in during the leader's absence to ensure continuity in the institution. The role of the deputy ombudsman. Scholars have painted a picture of an ideal deputy who is appreciated and admired by the head of an institution as laid out in the following rules that I'm going to share. Number one, if you are a deputy, you must be loyal to the leader and be his or her first follower, as deviation is construed to be betrayal. Work hard to fulfill the head's goals and aspirations. Keep your ambitions hidden. In most cases, you find that as a deputy, you have ambition to also head the institution at one point. But if you're going to be a good deputy that is going to have harmonious decision-making in an institution, then you must ensure that your ambitions must be hidden. If at any one time your head believes that you are a threat to their power, then this will affect the output in the organization. And when you're in charge, look and behave the part. You must look and behave the part. If you cannot comply with those simple rules, please preemptively move to another organization that can accommodate your aspirations and dreams. However, in our case, the Inspectorate of Government has crafted some approaches to simplify our work, because you can imagine how challenging it can be if all of you can make the same decisions and have equally the same power over the institution. Then it becomes, if the personalities are not the kind that peacemakers or are mediators, like my colleague said, then there'll be a problem. Yesterday, I had the honor to listen to some of the presenters from the other ombudsman, and I noted that many of your jurisdictions don't give binding force to the inspectorate to the ombudsman in their country. In our country, it's very different. In fact, it is even criminal for you not to implement our decisions or recommendations, because you can be charged in the courts of law, as you will see. So we've devised ways in which to harmoniously work, and this is some of the duties that the deputy conducts. We offer organizational stability. Where the substantive head of the institution is away from office, on official duty outside the country, or annual leave, the deputy is responsible for providing continuity and stability in leadership. The deputy ensures that the smooth functioning of operations that include decision-making are conducted, and these are binding. The deputy provides leadership support. The deputy works closely with the head of other strategic leadership and guidance to the implementation and execution of the mandate of the ombudsman. The deputy offers operational oversight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important for organizations to structure the operations in a way that brings clarity to the primary roles of the head and the deputy of the institution. Ambiguity of roles and mandates invariably generates confusion and conflict between or among leaders as well as the employees, and it is no doubt filters to the public. If there is any conflict between the leaders or perceived conflict, it drizzles down to the staff, because they will use that to either not to conduct to deliver on their mandate or to do their role. So you must, as a deputy and as the head, ensure that there is seamless cooperation between you and the deputy. So each of the institution's 3 heads, in my case, I'm sharing a case of Uganda, is responsible for overseeing the operation, is responsible for seeing the operation of the different directorates, like I explained. As a deputy, I'm the head of the Directorate of Ombudsman, as well as the head of the Directorate of Anti-Corruption. What do? I sanction investigations, order for arrests and prosecutions. I monitor implementation of alternative dispute resolution strategies. We issue directives and recommendations in administrative processes which are binding and can only be overturned by a high court through an appeal. And this is provided for in our laws. We have a law that operationalizes our work, which is the Inspectorate of Government Act. And one of the sections, 34, provides that a person who without reasonable excuse refuses or fails to comply with any order or direction of the inspectorate commits an offense and is liable on conviction to imprisonment not exceeding 3 years. I know that Professor Victor does not agree with our organization. We had a discussion and he thought that there should be division of labor. It should be another institution that is an ombudsman, and then the Inspectorate of Government may perhaps just deal with anti-corruption. But I challenged him. I don't know if there's so much impunity in your countries like it is in my country with public officers. I imagine if we were just the ombudsman and we only had to make recommendations and people know that our recommendations are either not binding or we cannot bite, I'm very doubtful that they would respect the recommendations or the reports that we make. But certainly our public officials know that when push comes to shove, then we can use the arm of the law to get them. The deputy also, those are some of the decisions I just talked about. Okay, decision-making is also one of the role of the deputy ombudsman in my country. The nature of ombudsman interventions requires one to make critical decisions in a timely manner. For instance, a decision to halt a process, whether or not to interdict a public officer. The duty bearer has a responsibility to assess the implications of the decisions and follow up with their implementation. The deputy is required to provide their input and make recommendations for corrective action to public institutions. I'm a team leader. The deputy ombudsman in my country provides managerial leadership and motivation to the team. I occasionally, for example, facilitate in-house skills building workshops such as improving writing and communication skills, drafting skills, and so on, which has benefited my team. Also, as a deputy, I contribute towards reporting and documentation. It's my responsibility to oversee the reporting function of the directorates that I head to ensure the accuracy of information relayed. The information provided forms part of the Inspectorate of Government by annual reports to Parliament. We also conduct stakeholder engagements. As a deputy, you are mandated to ensure that the Inspectorate of Government is in sync with other accountability organizations. We also participate in policy development. The law that provides for the deputy ombudsman is as is. Performance, that's the law. I'm not going to give the detail because I see a warning from the Lieutenant General, but I will share my slides. I put in quite a bit of time to prepare this, so Lieutenant General, I must finish it. So performance of the deputy, I don't know whether to use, of the deputy is to promote and foster strict adherence to the rule of law and principles of natural justice, promote fair, efficient, and effective performance and good governance in public offices. Like I said, we investigate any act, omission, advice by the Attorney General, by government, decision or recommendation by public officers. Now I'm going to go to the challenges. First, by a deputy ombudsman. The challenges faced by a deputy ombudsman range from institutional to personal challenges. Many scholars have opined that the role of a deputy carries with it the following inherent risks. Number one, can the deputy make decisions when the boss is not present? Can the deputy make budget or HR decisions in the absence of the substantive head? Can the deputy propose new initiatives when the head is not open to new ideas? How much discretion can a deputy head have in shaping policy? What if the deputy and the head do not get along? That's very dangerous. In my country, all the questions I have posed are answered in the affirmative. So I'm going to share my personal experience on how to solve these conflicts. Handling the pressure. These are some of the challenges that I face in conducting my duties. Handling the pressure of high-stake decisions. Occasionally, one is faced with the pressure of making tough decisions, especially where such decisions may have serious impact on individuals and institutions. We have so much power that is given to our institution, and you find that sometimes these decisions that we make have political connotations, and therefore handling the pressure from the different stakeholders, both political, technical, is not an easy feat. Balancing competing priorities, the tripartite role of the IG sometimes makes it challenging to balance the roles. Sometimes the anti-corruption role overshadows the other roles, and it's my duty to make a balance. When am I an ombudsman, and when am I doing anti-corruption work? You find that I sometimes have boardroom sessions, and instead of just mediating between the parties, I am forced to make orders because something, an anti-corruption action has to be taken. So how do I balance that? It's sometimes a challenge. Juggling administrative and operational duties, ensuring smooth operations while managing administrative tasks can sometimes be very tough. It therefore requires one to delegate most of the times. I'm an administrator, but at the same time, I'm a technical person. So juggling between that is sometimes, many times, takes a toll on me. Handling conflicts, maintaining professionalism and objectivity while mediating disputes and resolving conflicts is a great test. We often interface with difficult clients who have formed an opinion on a matter, therefore causing delay in resolution. Building trust and respect, maintaining the credibility of the institution in the public is an uphill task. The public is always scrutinizing our work and the integrity of the officers. Feeling inadequate despite the qualifications we have. Work-life balance. I'm being intimidated by the Lieutenant General. So I am going to conclude, but I will not allow to be intimidated because for the most part I worked with the military, so I know that the military is subject to civilian authority. I am going to end my presentation by a quote. We can change, Nelson Mandela said, we can change the world and make it a better place. It is our hands to make a difference. I thank you so much.
I'm really sorry to do this to you, Deputy IG, you know, as a friend, but unfortunately, we're really pressed for time. You know, yesterday, my deputy was also presenting at one of the sessions, and I actually went there to support her, but she felt I was there to monitor her, that she doesn't say anything bad about me. So I somehow wished that I was not there. We are pressed for time, but we are going to invite the last speaker, Professor Musi Makoko. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She'll be taking us through the topic oversight innovations, sharing good practices and lessons in effectiveness. Ma'am, you are invited to take the floor. I'm not sure whose phone is this. Okay.
Oh, okay. No. Oops. Let me put my timer here so that it guides me. Good morning. Bonjour. Ça va? You are most welcome in Botswana. Dumelang bagaetsho. My name, let me maybe start by saying distinguished guests, the protocol, the Ombudsman, Botswana Advocate Stephen Tirakhosi, and all the dignitaries that are here. And like I said, I think I have to simply say I welcome you all as a Botswana to my lovely country and observe all protocol. So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Botsalano. I'm Professor Botsalano Musimakoko. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Botswana Qualifications Authority. Someone was asking me earlier, what is this? And I simply said in one line, that is actually a body that oversees your qualifications. And it's a body that can actually determine whether your qualification is the right one or is fraudulent. So you can imagine how difficult that is. So BQA is a state-owned enterprise established by the Botswana Qualifications Authority Act, number 24 of 2013. And it has two critical objectives, which are to provide for and maintain the National Credit and Qualifications Framework. In short, we denote it as NCQF. And it's also to coordinate the education, training, and skills development quality assurance system from early childhood through tertiary education to lifelong learning. So on behalf of my country, the government of Botswana, I'm still repeating that I extend my warm welcome and feel so humbled to be invited here. This event represents a monumental step in recognizing the importance of human rights for all, especially the underprivileged. It is also a delight for us as a country to host such a global event following Nigeria's successful hosting of the first International Ombud Expo in 2019. I think the purpose here is to share with you my experiences as I work within that framework of ensuring that we overlook or we give an oversight to the education system. But before going into such, allow me to share briefly how my personal journey has shaped my understanding of institutional mandates and governance adhering service delivery. Through my experiences, I've realized that while systems are built to protect the common good, inconsistencies in service provision over time can normalize bad practices. This leads to continued inequalities and institutions that subjugate individuals. The power dynamics within systems, including the education system that I stand for, actually can diminish an individual's ability to negotiate their space and demand their rights. Not everyone can question the system. It takes, I would say, some people have said I'm bold, maybe that's the word to use here. So it normally takes certain skills for an individual to make or to question the system. Therefore, the likes of Ombudsman is established to speak on behalf of such people who cannot question the system. My lived experiences, which I would say is an advantage to me because I have tested the other side of the world, where I've worked for over 10 years, and I've seen the best institutions thriving in the midst of any wrongdoing. And also I had to come home and work. And still in that midst, I got some surprises. Because when you're away from home, you cherish everything. We love our country so much. And when you come in, you find that there are certain things that are going to surprise you each day that you walk into that office. So I overcame challenges by pursuing education. That's number one step, which is an equalizer of all. And through that, I developed research skills, strong analytical and problem-solving skills. This journey taught me the importance of respecting governing principles, acknowledging others' perspectives, and navigating complex systems with integrity. I then further, because it starts with you for you to be able to navigate the system. I then developed the concept of openness, open to learn and unlearn, because you cannot occupy certain roles that some of us occupy without unlearning certain practices. It is also part of my deep thinking approach that I work with traversing and navigating systems to make meaning out of situations. In other words, I question everything every day to try and find whether there's justice for the individual who cannot speak for themselves. During my career experience in my current workplace, which is BQA, Botswana Qualifications Authority, there were some investigations that were carried out and reports were produced. And these investigations were carried out by this very ombudsman that we have in Botswana. I was new in the office. It was a bit of a shock, but I allowed myself to learn and go through that process. So in that report, which is in the public domain, it was very clear that my institution has colluded with another institution. So what does that mean to you as a leader? I had to listen, because in the case of Botswana Qualification Authority, it's the students who come first, the learners. And so you can imagine if there's something that they're not happy with, and they go to the ombudsman's office, or the Motsereganyi, as you call it in Setswana, the mediator's office, they go there with all the expectation that they will be assisted, that their rights will be recognized. So then I got the report. And the first thing that I had to do is to listen to the students and also to act as a team and do our level best to close the gaps that were identified. But I think I need to point out that the terrain of investigations is not easy, primarily because of lack of data. And if there's any little of it, in many cases, it's unreliable. So I think in our institutions, data keeping, record keeping, how we protect that very data that we collect is still a bit of a challenge that we need to work on. Because without that data, it is difficult for me. I'm a researcher, so I know what I mean by saying I need something, I need that evidence. And so I can imagine for the Ombudsman's office, what they go through if information is missing or it's lacking. So those are some of the things that I think I had to really realize and say to myself, I need to do something better in my organization to make sure that we collect data, we observe the privacy laws, and we ensure that we have the framework of how data has to be kept, protected, and also how that data has to be stored, and how that data has to be disposed of, because these are the principles that one has to make sure that they cover. So the theme of this expo speaks to trusted institutions, righting injustices, which I think in my experience, we have been striving so hard as BQA to right the wrongs. And also making sure that we bolster quality governance. And like I said earlier, it doesn't come easy. It comes with a cost. The other speaker who spoke before me said that sometimes you are challenged because certain decisions that you take involve certain individuals, and you really wonder how best am I going to do it. But in my experience, I realized that it's my navigation skills that have helped me to really pursue what I believed was right for the students, and even what I believed was right for the economy. Because the social ills touches government officials, politicians, business leaders, and journalists alike. This corruption that I think we speak about almost every day, it destroys national economies. It undermines social stabilities and erodes public trust. So the correlation between good governance and economic development is well established. We all know that. And so one other thing that I think I use a lot in our organization, within our experience, is the ICT that we all love and we are here to use. It enables us to do business, but at the same time, it offers promise for revolutionizing public service delivery, but at the same time, they can also create new opportunities for corruption, such as forensic fraud, fraudulent credentials or qualifications, fake institutions under the disguise of online schooling. These are things that affect my institution. And these are things that affect our morale as a society. So we love that ICT, but at the same time, it brings a lot of challenges for us. We have the dark web, cryptocurrencies, or digital public services, where information sometimes is not used in the right form of things. So corruption hinders economic development, distorts markets, and damages integrity of both public and private sector. So for an institution the likes of BQA, we work with private, we work with the public. But the mandate makes sure that it takes me to the student. The learner is the center of everything that we do. We try our best to make sure that the learner is assisted. We all know that many governments are adopting tougher laws and establishing or strengthening anti-corruption units. Issues such as illicit financial flows, asset recovery, transparency of beneficial ownership are receiving growing attention. However, corruption still remains the obstacle. So in my experience, going through these claims that were made or recommendations made by ombudsmen and other investigations, I had to, as an individual, as the head of the institution, go an extra mile to even go to courts myself and take an oath to protect good governance. Because the title of the report from the ombudsman was saying maladministrations. Rules are not observed. So I had to ensure that in my coming and assisting the nation, I had to do the right thing. And the right thing was to pursue, to follow, and get to the point of going to courts and protecting the position of a learner who was disadvantaged. But in many cases, sometimes we don't do it as heads of institutions. Maybe we give it to our HR departments or we give to our external lawyers, but in this case, it was me who went to court and said, yes, indeed, it was wrong for the students maybe to be given half baked system. So, to address these challenges, we must include in the Constitution's laws that give the public the power to participate and engage. Engage in locally owned and led processes to assess corruption risks and design mitigation strategies. We should also use tools as political economy analysis to identify corruption problems and potential allies for reform. Implement anti-corruption strategies that promote transparency and accountability. Include values, integrity, and anti-corruption education in school curricula. I think in that way, we can at least, for the next generation that is not here, some 100 years to come, ensure that they will have a good understanding of the wrongs that comes out from a system that does not respect governance. So in conclusion, the fight against corruption requires a multifaceted approach involving all sectors of society. Being accountable taps on the individual's ability to be honest to the system and being honest to himself or herself or themselves. If you are not honest to yourself, issues of accountability are going to be second in your list. So that is what I experienced in my career life, as well as in my personal life, that you have to speak to yourself. It touches the inner core of who you are, then you'll be able to respond to the system and make sure that you correct the wrong and make sure that everyone is protected and they are loved and the human rights are anchored on good principles. So as we proceed with this expo, I look forward to insightful discussions on how we can meet the challenges of righting injustices and bolstering quality governance in our diverse institutions. With those words, thank you very much.
I was saying to Prof, I hope she was not intimidated when I indicated she's left with 4 minutes. Immediately she said she was concluding. But thank you very much, Prof. Esteemed delegates, we are left with about, 40 minutes for discussion. I was taking copious notes here to try and summarize or lift out the salient points that have been touched upon by all the speakers. But I think if I attempt to do that, I'll be eating into discussion time. I really want to, from the outset, open the floor for questions and answers. And please, the way I want us to approach this, you stand up, say your name, and also pose your question and say to whom that question is directed. I think it will assist us in that way. So do we have any roving mics here? Roving mic. Hello. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm advised that the mics are on the table there. So I'm now opening the floor, and you can actually pose your question to any of the eminent speakers that have taken us through the topics we were discussing. Okay, maybe whilst you are still thinking, because I see no hands, let me summarize quickly salient points. We started with a presentation from Honorable Chande, the Ombudsman of Mozambique. He took us through the conflict in his country, and peace-building efforts there. And the initial peace accord was signed in 1992. And subsequent to that, there was further conflict between Frelimo and Renamo, which was ended by the Maputo Agreement that led to the integration of the Renamo forces. He then went to pose a question as to what role can Ombudsman institution play in peace building. And of course, he's posing this question because Ombudsman institutions are mainly about addressing issues of maladministration. And therefore, he ended up by saying we need to enhance the role of ombudsman in peace building. Of course, Honorable Aline Brock, first she clarified that the topic she was angling was rather on the question of whether women are better mediators than men, and concluded with the fact that there's no scientific basis for that. You know, that actually people are nurtured and with characteristics of mediation, and actually it depends on how they respond to those to be able to be good mediators. And then also indicated that broader mediation actually should address issues of silencing the guns, and took us through the fact that there are two forms of mediation, the formal one, which is called track 1, and the informal one, track 2. And said according to the UN women mediators, according to the UN, women mediators assist in achieving lasting peace, which I really took to heart. And that there is power in coming together, in enhancing peace, and that is the experience of actually Liberian women. And that also when women are involved, they tend to focus on systemic issues, which means looking for lasting solutions to problems. And also indicated that, you know, for women to thrive in a male-dominated situation, or rather, in male-dominated situation, women find it difficult to thrive because of issues of gender discrimination. And finally, that there is a general belief amongst men that women are not good in track 1 mediation, which is actually not a fact. And welcome the fact that in the TRC, women are now being taken through mediation training. I hope I summarized those points nicely. And of course, our next speaker was the Deputy IG from Uganda, who was taking us through the organization of the inspectorate, including issues of the mandate that covers 3 distinct and yet interrelated functions. And emphasize that the inspectorate is actually an independent body, and this is actually covered in the Constitution, and that deputies are given the same powers as the Inspector General. Something that I find difficult. We're listening to a presentation from Gambia. It said, you know, this can sometimes lead to people fighting if the roles are not properly delineated, you know. But in your situation, you seem to manage things very well. And of course, also emphasize the fact that ambiguity of roles tends to generate conflict amongst the leaders in institutions. And lastly, the Prof took us through the mandate of the Botswana Qualification Authority and emphasized that power dynamics can actually diminish any individual's quest to actually lodge a complaint, and that education really is an equalizer of all, and emphasize the fact that we cannot occupy certain posts without unlearning some of the issues that will make us not effective in those posts, and the importance of record keeping and correlation between good governance and economic prosperity, which is well established, and of course that the fight against corruption requires a multi-party approach. I hope then with lifting out those salient points, I've reminded you of the discussion we had, and we can now pose our questions. General, please, ready?
Thank you, General. It's Oswald Reddy, the Western Cape Police Ombudsman. I want to start from the last speaker. The question relates to foreign or international qualifications. Are they accredited in Botswana? And secondly, do you have levels on your NCQF? For example, in South Africa, PhD will be an NQF level 10. I just want to understand how it's done in Botswana. The second question is to Honorable Ombudsman Chande. I wanted to establish whether you have any powers to investigate politicians. So if the President, the ministers, or the members of Parliament are involved in maladministration, do you have powers to investigate them? Because you indicated that for conflict resolution, you have to be neutral and not get involved in politics. And thirdly, to Honorable Anne, I wanted to see, in terms of appointment, do you have to apply for the position of the deputy, or are you nominated by who? And then who do you account to? If you are independent and you don't sort of have a oversight body, do you account to someone? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General. Those are wonderful presentations that have opened our eyes. My attention is just attracted by the presentation made by the delegation from Uganda. And I'm trying to understand and ask for explanation whether the load being carried by them is not too much. Because from what she had stated, they are fighting corruption, and they are at the same time the ombudsman's responsibility of Uganda. Is that a special case in Uganda or in other countries? They have the same, because what we have in Nigeria, different organizations are responsible for handling those. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take the last, before we proceed. I recognize your hand there at the back.
Hello. My question is, what plans?
Sorry, we'll get to you, please.
Okay. Sorry.
Bom dia. Good morning. Senhor moderador, eu primeiro quero felicitar as intervenções de todos os preletores, mas tenho uma questão.
All the speakers, but I just have an issue with the Deputy Inspector of Uganda. First, if I understood correctly, that
As recomendações têm caráter obrigatório e até podem dar origem a penas de prisão. Eu gostaria de saber, sendo inspetor-geral, se não é nenhum juiz,
Or if it's not a judge, how can that actually expect that the person can go to jail?
A inspetora
And also,
adjunta diz que
the deputy inspector also
há
mentioned
inspetor
that there is the structure that is done by one general inspector and then two deputy general inspectors, and also the ombudsman that all have different functions. And also, is it possible that also have the same salaries? Because in Angola, there is ombudsman and also a deputy ombudsman, but even though they are selected by parliament, but the ombudsman in Angola is a highest rank. It's got a higher salary and a different car than the one that is ombudsman deputy. And also the functions of the deputy can actually not employ or actually make decisions of that employment of other staff. And that is my issue, and thank you very much.
Now allow our eminent speakers to actually respond to the first set of questions, and after that we'll then proceed. Yes, we still come, we are going to have responses and then we'll proceed. Thank you very much. I don't know who wants to start. Oh, Prof, sorry.
Would you like me to respond, sir?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll be the first because mine is very short. Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you. The question was about the international qualifications. Yes, we do verify and evaluate those qualifications as well. And the other question was about the NCQF, the National Credit Qualification Framework. In Botswana, yes, it goes to level 10, which is a PhD level. So it's so similar to the South African NCQF. Because NCQFs, these are instruments that are actually, it's sort of a new concept in our own continent for the last 5, 6, 7 years, but these are very good concepts that allows an individual to port their qualifications anywhere in the world, as long as you have studied within the NCQF level streams. Thank you.
IG Uganda, are you ready?
I thank you so much. My colleague was trying to interpret the Portuguese question from the president of AUMA, and I will answer what I picked. I was asked, so how are we appointed? Do we apply for the position? No, we do not apply for the position. We are presidential appointees. The president appoints eminent personalities in society that should be at the equivalent of a high court judge. And these persons have to go through vetting in parliament, and it's parliament that will recommend to the president to proceed with the appointment. So the head of the institution and the two deputies are presidential appointments. Then how do they leave office? The Constitution provides circumstances under which you can be asked to leave office. If you have infirmity of body or mind, or instances where you have committed crimes that are considered against you, the code of conduct that is expected of the position that you hold. Even in this case, the president sets up a committee that is chaired by a Supreme Court judge, and this committee is the one that recommends to the president your removal. That, in my view, is meant to protect the office, but also give to avoid unnecessary removal from office, and in the way it provides security of tenure to the office holders. So that's the appointment. And who do we account to? I noted that I mentioned we conduct biannual reports to Parliament, and these reports supposed to be discussed in Parliament, but maybe I should have mentioned, I noticed that Zambia also stated that many times they're not discussed, but we are not accountable to individuals, but are accountable to Parliament, and we must share these reports biannually.
You said your recommendations are mandatory, and you
Then
sometimes send someone to the prison. How it's happened? This is what she asked.
So then Nigeria asked, my colleague, my brother from Nigeria asked whether the load is too much. On the face of it, but it's manageable because we are 3, and our organization has a capacity of over 500 employees. Us, we just the administrators, the strategic leadership is just the 3 of us, but we have offices throughout the country. We have about 16 regional offices throughout the country, spread throughout the country. But also, there are other oversight accountability bodies. It's not just us. And us, we only deal with issues of corruption. But also the police in Uganda is mandated to handle issues of corruption. So you find sometimes we're faced with instances where, I think one of the presenters yesterday also alluded to it, whereby you find we are investigating the same thing and we're all in the same place, and it causes some friction. So we've decided to come up with the interagency forum where all accountability institutions meet and determine who is going to handle what. But when it comes to issues of ombudsman, then we're the only institution that does that. And then if I could remember what my president, the UMA president asked, he said, I said that we can send people to prison. In the course of our investigations, if it is presumed by the Inspector General of Government or deputy that the person should be arrested on spot, yes, you can issue an order of arrest, or you can order an institution, and that is police, to cause an arrest of the person. It depends on the circumstances, but also now the law provides protection of the people you arrest. They cannot be held beyond 48 hours. I think those are about 2 days. But that is in the course, and I'm thinking this is the same with all the other jurisdictions. In the course of the investigations, if it is in the best interest of either the society or the organization or the community that that person should be arrested, then you can issue an arrest. But that arrest certainly someone cannot be in detention for more than 48 hours. But usually these arrests are conducted after investigations, and you want to take the person to court. So you investigate. That's why I haven't talked about the legal department, the legal directorate, but we have a fully fledged legal directorate that handles issues of prosecution, and that is done after the person has gone through investigations, the report has been issued, and now they're arrested and they're taken to court before a competent court to answer for their crimes. What is the relationship between the Ombudsman and the Inspector General of Government? So far, so good. We have not had issues amongst us, because if you are an administrative head, there's so much to do with administration of the institution, and for the most part, this is critical to the effectiveness of the organization. So you find that we have delineated our work. Each deputy knows what they do. We have a three-role mandate, like I emphasize: the anti-corruption role that deals with abuse of office, embezzlement, corruption, fraud, etc. And then we have the leadership code role that deals with the conduct of leaders, whereby leaders declare their assets, incomes, and They are verified, I think, every 2 years. And if your assets, incomes, and liabilities are not commensurate to your non-sources of income, then there's a tribunal where we send you etc. It's a whole process, and this involves all public officials in the country. That's another office on its own. And I would imagine that in other jurisdictions they're independent, but us, it is under one body. And then we have the Ombudsman Office. So if there are 3 heads, that means each of the heads is mandated to provide leadership at each of these mandates. Mine is the Ombudsman, so we don't overlap, because if I know that my mandate is the Ombudsman, then you will not find me doing leadership code issues.
The last part of the question is that you can just salaries, benefits.
Yes, we have the same benefits, and if you came, you would find that even our cars are the same, the security is the same, and it's largely the same for all of us.
Yeah, I think it's one.
Okay, thank you. My neighbor is interpreting the Portuguese. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chande, also for assisting with the translation. We may have to compensate you for that job that we do on our behalf. Yeah, thank you. We'll proceed and take the next set of questions. Please, can I plead again?
Hello?
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Edward Msaki, and my questions are, what steps are being taken to ensure transparency and accountability in the future work of the Ombudsman Office? 2, how does the Ombudsman Office plan to address any current challenges and improve customer satisfaction in the future? Are there any upcoming initiatives to enhance the accessibility and efficiency of the Ombudsman services? What plans are in place to improve the services provided by the Ombudsman Office? Thank you.
Okay, maybe we can deal with that, and it's directed to all of us as ombudspersons. I don't know who would like to start. Perhaps, Madam Clerk, do you want to start? Yes.
I'm sorry. Since I'm retired, I think I should ask the investigations officer from Bermuda to speak to some of those issues. One of them was accessibility. There are little things sometimes that you can do to ensure that people have trust that they can come to you. So for example, I was mentioning this morning to a colleague that in Bermuda, the government finishes its services at 5 o'clock. It's generally 9 o'clock till 5. So when we established the Office of the Ombudsman for Bermuda, we made sure that our hours were 8:30 to 5:30. Therefore, people, A, could see that there's a difference between us and the government, and B, they were able to come after their own work finished. So that's a simple accessibility issue. Another simple issue was being on the ground floor so that anyone in a wheelchair, etc., would be able to come in. And the third thing we promoted quite early on is that even if we could not help you to resolve your problem, so even if it was not really within the jurisdiction of the Ombudsman, we would do whatever it takes to direct you to the right person. And if we couldn't direct you to the right person, if your issue was just not an issue that could be handled by an oversight body, then we will explain that to you. So we sort of went a few steps along the way to help people understand why they're going to leave our office without getting everything satisfied. And I remember one man who left the office laughing, and he said, "I don't know why I'm laughing, you didn't really help me." Aquila, would you be able to answer any of the other points of those questions? She is there currently.
Okay, as far as accessibility, some things that we have done is to make everything that we write at what we will say 8th grade level, so that everyone in the country can read it. We're a very small island, only 33 kilometers, but we also will go to people's houses to take complaints if they have any mobility issues. We are trying to establish relationships with each nationalities association in Bermuda so that we can have access to translators. So those are some examples of accessibility.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other Ombud who want to share with us their perspective on the questions that have been posed? Yes, Honorable Chan.
Vou responder à questão colocada pelo...
The answer is going to be provided in Portuguese, if you can, yeah.
Vou responder à questão colocada...
Can I ask you to pause a bit? The person who asked the question is trying to get the translation machine. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. You can proceed.
Thank you. Vou responder à questão colocada pelo Ombudsman da Polícia do Western Cape. Ele pergunta se nós temos poderes para investigar os políticos, nomeadamente ministros e outros políticos. A resposta é sim, nós investigamos sempre que há um caso de má administração. Se houver um ato administrativo que tenha sido praticado por um ministro, por exemplo, e que ofenda os direitos de algum cidadão, nós vamos investigar esses casos, vamos dar a oportunidade do ministro também explicar-se e, no final, nós vamos produzir a nossa recomendação. Nosso mandato é muito vasto em matéria de má administração. Nós interpelamos não só os ministros, governadores, secretários de Estado, presidentes de conselhos de administração de empresas, mesmo a Procuradora-Geral da República, o Presidente do Tribunal Supremo, mas tem que ser matéria relacionada à má administração. Tem que haver um ato de má administração. Nós não investigamos, como eu disse, tive a oportunidade de dizer, casos, não investigamos corrupção, porque nós temos instituições especializadas na investigação de corrupção. Mas em relação à má administração, só não investigamos o Presidente da República em matérias dos seus atos, porque nós assumimos que os atos do Presidente da República, muitos deles, são atos políticos. E o nosso âmbito é atos administrativos. Mas, por exemplo, o Procurador-Geral da República toma uma decisão administrativa que prejudica um funcionário, nós vamos interpelar o Procurador-Geral da República para que possa corrigir a situação. Creio ter respondido à pergunta. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado, Chefe Chan. There's a gentleman who was seated there with oh, there he is at the back now. Okay, can we perhaps, whilst I see he's still busy there, any other question or input, comment? It's your colleague there who had the hand raised, but I see now he's maybe you've given him instructions to do something. But yes, you can take the floor.
No, I just wanted maybe to clarify that the composition of the Inspectorate of Government requires that one of the top heads must be a judge. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of us must be at the level of judges. My colleague and I are advocates, the deputies, but the head of the institution is a political figure. She's not, what do I mean? She's not a lawyer, she's not an advocate. So it doesn't necessarily require, the law doesn't necessarily require that everyone must be an advocate. And somebody said I didn't state my name. My name is a mouthful, especially my surname, but I'm going to try and tell it to you. Anne, the other is Twinomja Muhaire. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm looking around. I can see no further questions. I want to abuse my position as a chair a bit and or pose a question, not a question as such, maybe make a remark on the binding nature of recommendations, you know. In the course of our work, sometimes my staff get frustrated when some of the recommendations we make are actually not implemented. And they've been trying to push that as we are busy with the legislative review, that perhaps we should insert a clause that says our recommendation will be binding. But I said to them personally, I'm not for that. Because the problem when the recommendations are binding, it sometimes complicates your work, you know, because the relationship becomes conflictual. And you find that then the entities that you are providing oversight over, they want to challenge your recommendation in courts and all that. And in South Africa, we've had a very bad experience, especially with our previous public protector, where it led to her finally being impeached by Parliament. So it's just my personal view that it's better to rely on the powers of persuasion rather than the recommendations being binding and automatically enforced by courts. I see the lemon seems to be dry. I can't squeeze it any further. At this juncture, therefore, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the speakers who've actually helped us navigate through the theme of our session today. For me, it's a bit lamentable that we couldn't get the two speakers who were billed to speak on silencing the guns in Africa and the AU Agenda 2063. Because for me, they would have laid a firm base for us to try and locate and find our role as Ombuds institution in terms of how we can best take this important process of ensuring that our continent is actually peaceful and prosperous. Our continent is a very rich continent, but because we allow other countries who've got interest in our minerals to actually instigate conflicts so that they can have easy access to those natural resources that keep our people back and make sure that, or rather result in us not being to fan or cater for the most vulnerable in our societies. But these presentations, I think, they've assisted us in terms of trying to look for ways and means of seeing that although most of us, our mandates are actually prescribed in our acts, how best we could actually find a way to play a role in terms of pursuing this important agenda for our continent. I think I'm privileged to be the last moderator to moderate in this big hall, because we're informed that the afternoon sessions will be in the other smaller halls, and I think it was really a privilege for me to be here. I also want to thank you all, because I was worried that the attendance of this session wouldn't be what it is, but you have supported this session in your peak numbers, and thanks for your contribution to the discussions that we've had, and I hope we are able to take away with us some important lessons that we can actually factor into our work environments to improve the way we deliver on our mandates. With those few words then, and also not standing between you and your lunch, I want to declare this session formally closed. Thank you very much.